I think the difference is we're not going to give just a blank check for your parents' care. We're going to set a limit.
I think that's really important to have that boundary and have that conversation prior, whether it's with you and your financial planner or if you're in a couple, have that conversation together and know, because there can be some resentment too that pops up if you haven't set a boundary before, whether it's resenting your parent or it's, maybe you're caring for your partner's parent, a little bit of resentment towards your partner, and that's not helpful. Nobody wants that. And so getting a conversation ahead of time and talking about it, communicate when we're setting those boundaries. So important. Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bree and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. This week we have 2 episodes coming out at the same time, and it depends on which path you're on. Like, this is kind of like a choose your own adventure week for the podcast. So we have 2 episodes around planning for parents. One is planning for broke parents, and the other one is planning for rich parents. Now, that's not like a magic number somewhere, but we've done a lot of like parent checkups. We do this plan for parents step, and we find that parents are broker than we thought or richer than we thought. That income disparity in parents is real. I mean, it is like palpable. There's very few parents we find kind of just in the middle. So if you have parents that are a little bit on the, you think they might be more on the broke side, and, kind of if you want a number, it's probably right now about less than $500,000, because that $500,000 goes to their long-term care. They're not going to have anything left. This episode's for you. If, on the other hand, you have the parents that have, millions of dollars, that's the other episode. If you're in a couple and you have both, well, you get to listen to both episodes. You may hear some things that repeat because some of the basics around kind of the paperwork is going to be the same. But then how do you approach it as the child and working with your parents, and their options are going to be completely different. So we're going to kind of do both sides of the coin. And we're starting with the parents that don't necessarily have the assets. We're going to talk about things like Medicaid. We're going to talk about long-term care, other things that are going to be impacted, and also what you can and cannot do to help them. And this is going to be one of those that, you're going to have to set some boundaries and say, no, mom, no, I can't do that for you, which may be hard for you. So Bree, I mean, you've helped clients that both have kind of the parents with a whole bunch of money and not. What do you think? Where do you start with the ones that, you look at the numbers like they're not going to have enough?
Yeah, this is where I always say we need to talk about what your boundaries are as our client first before we go down the rabbit hole of how we're going to help. You first need to determine whether or not you're okay with them living with you. And if you're in a couple, you guys need to have this conversation together. I've had conversations with couples and they say, hey, your mom can live with us, but mine, absolutely not. And so that's okay too. Determining what those boundaries are for those different individuals is going to be super, super important. But boundaries. Let's start there.
Yeah. And in order to get the boundaries, we need to know kind of what your parents' current situation is and like, where are you going to have to support them? And I know you have a favorite tool called the Knockbox, and we'll include a link to that. But tell me what that is, because I've given it to a bunch of clients, and like, it's just a way to get a picture of what's going on.
Yeah. The Knockbox is basically a file, essentially, a bunch of files, and it has different sheets for this is information regarding your primary residence. This is information regarding your vehicles, regarding your assets that you have, any debt you may have. Insurance is in there, estate planning, taxes, all of those different things. And it's really, the pro of it is many parents like to do things on pen and paper. The con of it is there's no digital download. So if you're like me and like to type everything out, it can be a little bit frustrating, but it's a good way to go ahead and figure out where those things are. I was doing it, and the one thing I didn't think about was, where's your mailbox at? If your mailbox is not right outside of your house, well, where's it at? Is there a key for it? Where do you return that key to? All of those different things. It's getting a lot of information. And I know I've shared this in another podcast, but I just ordered one and had it shipped to my parents' house. And so then I showed up about a week later. I told them, hey, you're getting a box that's coming, just bring it inside. And when I get there, I'll deal with it. And then I opened up and I said, congratulations, this is what you get to fill out now. And they've been great about filling it out. It's been super helpful to have everything nice and organized. It comes with the files and all the folders as well, just to give you a good picture of what the heck is going on.
Yeah, and the knockbox is one of those. It was interesting. We first started talking. I started first time kind of end of last year, and I had folks buying it for Christmas presents, and I'm like, it's kind of a harsh Christmas present, but it's good. And you're really starting to try to have a conversation. One of the issues whenever you're working with planning for parents is you need to actually know what's going on, and you need to have those tough conversations. You can follow Bree's model and just mail them a copy of it. I'm kind of good with it, but that might be a little harsh for some parents. For others, I'm going to encourage you to blame me. So, like, hey, I was talking to my financial advisor. He said, I need to know about your financial situation and what your wishes are. Like, it's going to be an awkward conversation, but you need to have it.
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners, it's Bree. I highly encourage you to schedule a Childfree Wealth checkup. During this time, you're going to get a couple of forms to fill out that include your life and financial plan. We'll review them, and then we're going to have a meeting and go through them with you. We're going to give you some advice and things to work on and talk through things to make your finances simpler so your life can be amazing. You can schedule yours by going to our website, childfreewealth.com, and clicking the Schedule Now button.
And with parents that are broke, they may be embarrassed. They may not want to share with you kind of what their situation is. But if you don't know what it is, you can just have a nightmare. So if you can plan ahead, you can then have a plan for care, plan for money, plan for everything else, rather than, oh, mom slipped and fell and broke her hip. I mean, it is one of those issues where you have an emergency and you don't know where this stuff is. It can be a nightmare. It's one of those balancing acts. My father-in-law passed away and it took me 3 days to find all of his stuff. And I knew what I was looking for. And, I'm a financial professional. I help others on this. And it still was a challenge. I think you need to start having that conversation early. And I mean, like now, whatever age your parents are, whatever age you are, you need to know what are their wishes? What are their documents? Are you named in them? If you have brothers and sisters, kind of like who's making the decisions for it? Who's the power of attorney? Who's the executor? Do they all want to be on the machines? Do they not? I mean, for my parents, my mother wants, no machines, just pull the plug. My father wants all the machines. How are we going to make sure your wishes are followed? What are their burial wishes? What is their financial situation? I mean, like, are they broke, or do they got something? Like, and it's going to be a scale, which then is going to allow you to set, all right, here's what we're willing to do. But you have to get their data first. And I think the challenge is like, this is, for some folks, it's going to feel like you're parenting your parent, and you kind of are. I mean, Bree, I know you just sent the box to them, but I mean, how do you advise clients on how to have that conversation?
Yeah, I think you need to determine kind of where you are in as far as your relationship with your parents. I have always been the person who just says what I think, and it's gotten me in trouble over the years, but it's also been great too. So for them, it's not surprising to just get a box and have me say, hey, you need to do this so I know what the heck is going on. But if you've never had that sort of conversation, it's probably just good to get a start and say, I'm going through this right now. I'm trying to figure out my estate planning and all of that. But I'd really like to know, what about your guys' plan? Because I don't want to be surprised when it comes. I've told people before that, yes, you have a lot going on. And when the time comes and you pass, I want to be able to just focus on grieving you and missing you and not having to figure this out. So that's another line that I tell people, hey, go ahead and use that for them. One thing I do want to mention before I forget is some parents have already prepaid funeral plans. I saw a billboard a few weeks ago and it said, working on Medicaid spend down, we can help. And it was from I think a headstone company or a funeral home. So ask your parents, have they prepaid for a funeral already? And if so, what funeral home is that with? Do they have their headstone already or a plot or anything like that? Because they might have some of those things and just never talked to you about it before. So I think that's incredibly important bringing up those conversations and just having that. It very much varies based off of where you are. Even, in my own life death has always been a very seen thing in my family. And so it's not a surprise, every Memorial Day weekend, we go out and put flowers on all the graves. I see a lot of that, but my spouse hadn't seen that before. And so you need to know, what is that nature like in your family? And then that's how you structure the conversation. It's probably going to be a bit more gentle of approach if you've never really seen death in your family, whereas I see it all the time. So I'm just blunt about it.
Yeah. And I think the other opportunity, and it's going to sound a little weird, but just go with me for a second, is if somebody passes in your family, it's often a good time to then say to your parents, hey, I want to prevent this mistake. Because there's always a mistake. The running joke in the kind of estate planning world is the only reason not to have a will is if you hate your family. It's just, it causes issues. When you say, hey, well, you had to deal with grandma's issues or your aunt's issues or whatever else it is, it can give them that opportunity to have that conversation. And I think the challenge is when parents don't have the assets, they may kind of go, well, there's not much you can do. Well, that's not 100% true. We're on kind of like a hunt to find their information. So the first thing we need to do is find kind of their will, their medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney. And if they don't have one, well, then we got to get one done. I recommend freewill.com. It's literally free. I mean, you might have to pay for a notary service in your local area. It might be $15-20, but you can get some paperwork in place, and you want to have a copy on you at all times. If you're the one named in it, you need to have a copy. If you or your family member are going to be the one decision, maybe your brother or sister, whatever it is, whoever it is needs to be there. And when you're looking at those documents, you want to know what are their wishes, and they may not have talked about it. So you may have to walk them through it or have the conversation, and you want to make sure the whole family is on board with this. I previously worked as a medic, and I think the nightmare situations are when you have family at the bedside fighting over what to do, which really happens a lot, more than you would expect, because they're like, well, mom told me this. And somebody else like, well, but this is really what she wants. And this is what the doctor says. And like, you have this battle, and that's where the paperwork's going to win, because the paperwork's going to say which of you makes the decisions. And that's where you need to know, like, who's in that role. And I think when it comes to siblings, it's one of those things we got to be careful. The child-free folks get like, oh, well, you don't have kids, so you can take care of mom. No. And I'm going to keep picking on mom. I apologize. It could be dad, it could be whoever. Just happens to be mom on top of my mind right now. But I think the challenge is you need to be able to say, this is where I'm good. This is where my brother, sister, whatever sibling is, and then have that conversation well beforehand. In some families where like one kid is the medical power attorney, the other is the financial power attorney, just because of where their skills are. Awesome. I've seen others where one person does it for everybody. Awesome. It doesn't really matter. What I do watch out for documents, every once in a while, I'll read somebody's documents and it'll say like, the children together make this decision. That to me is a nightmare. Like if you and your brother have to make decisions in an emergency and we have to agree, that's just asking for trouble rather than saying, all right, I'm first in line, you're second in line. And it's not saying one's better or worse, but you need to have kind of a pecking order for this so that there are no battles. I mean, Bree, what do you think about kind of having this conversation with siblings and kind of the family dynamics around this?
Yeah, family dynamics can definitely be tough, and it can piss some people off if they're not the ones in charge. But it's also important so that way it isn't that fighting alongside the bed, because that's not helpful either. And while it may suck to, if you're not the person who's making the decisions, to feel like, hey, you wanted to make those decisions for your family member, ultimately it is their choice to assign whoever they feel is best suited for that role. And so that's important to remember too. Part of honoring their wishes is also honoring whoever they assign to fill those roles.
Yep. And since we're talking about parents that are a bit broke, this becomes one of those where like people are like, I'm not it. Like, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, well, I mean, we all have to have an agreement of who's willing to do what, and time, money, effort. When you start diving into your parents' finances, What you need to know first is, and this is going to sound obnoxious, but go with me, do they have long-term care insurance or not? Like that's kind of like a decision-making process. If they do, is it decent coverage? Is it going to get them there? If not, what is our plan for long-term care? And if your parents have less than $500,000, whether it's in the net worth of their house or cash, chances are they're going to be on Medicaid. And in full transparency, Medicaid care is not the best. And, we're recording this at the beginning of 2025. They're talking about cutting Medicaid. Is it going to be there? That's an issue. And if your parents are going to end up on Medicaid, you have to be okay with that care level. Because if you're going to visit them and they're like, oh, this place is disgusting. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, like Medicaid facilities, because your feet stick to the ground because they're so disgusting in some of them. I mean, there are some nice ones, but like the waiting list is huge. Or like you really just can't even get in. Are you okay with that? And if not, are you going to let them live with you? Are you going to live with them? I mean, there's all these issues, but you need to decide first, are we going to use Medicaid or not? If you're going to use Medicaid, then we can get into some of the strategies around, how do we preserve some of their assets? There's some games there, but you need to decide, are you okay with it? I had a couple and they were like, yeah, we're not okay with it. We're going to pay for our parents' long-term care. I said, okay. And we did the math on it and they had 3 parents between them. And I said, okay, at today's dollars, that's about $750,000 what it's going to cost you for long-term care. And they're like, I don't mean that. And I'm like, well, that's fine too. This goes back to Bree started with boundaries. Like you are setting a boundary. And the first one is what level of care are they getting based on their assets? Bree, what do you think? I mean, are you okay with Medicaid care? I mean, where's the line?
I think it's incredibly personal decision for every family. And I can't answer that from my perspective because it wouldn't be a true answer. Everybody needs to make that decision. I can't make that decision for you. Dr. J can't make that decision for you. And you just have to think about it deeply from yourself, where you're at too, of what that looks like.
Yeah. And I think this is where the challenge is that your parents' planning or lack thereof, their financial situation, is going to impact your outcome in your financial plan. And especially where I get worried is, long-term care is $115,000 a year if you pay out of pocket for a skilled nursing facility. If you have something like cognitive decline where you're in there for years upon years upon years, that can drain everything. And now you're going to be in Medicaid care. Like I don't want to make Medicaid out to be the boogeyman, but there are haves and have-nots in this. Like, I mean, there are really nice facilities, really nice ways to retire. That's not what we're talking about here. So then we get to the other option. People are like, well, they can live with me or I can live with them. And this is a way to not pay for out-of-pocket care. And this is one I watch out in particular for our soloists, the single with no kids, because it's like, oh, you don't have any kids and you don't have a spouse, so you can live with mom or she can live with you. Like, it's just like an automatic answer. And I'm like, no, not really. I mean, because mom moves in for broken hip. She's rehabbed in 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, you're like, all right, mom, you moving out? And she's like, no, this is comfy. Like, I like this. and like, mom, I love you, but I got to have a life too. And I think that's where setting those boundaries comes in. I mean, my wife and I have decided nobody lives with us. That's kind of how we're going to do it. We're going to support in other ways. But you have to decide if you're okay living with a family member and supporting them for the rest of your life. And technically it's the rest of their life, but what's going to happen is any time and effort you put into that's going to impact your own life. Any time and effort is going to impact your career, how much money you can save. I mean, it's all of these other factors. And Bree's 100% right. We can't make the choice for you, but I want it to be a conscious choice before there's an emergency, not when something happens.
Yeah, making a choice when something happens is difficult. And we've seen it from, I will never forget the call where this individual was in the bathroom and just sitting there because it was the middle of an emergency and it was hard. even just think about it
in tears
now.
all around, like
Yeah.
client, us, everybody. Like,
And it's been a while since that. And I still think about that and get teary eyed because that was just hard to go through. And so I always use that as a cautionary tale of let's get a plan done, get a plan done early. And in that case, it wasn't that we weren't working on a plan. It just, things happened faster than anticipated. That making a plan for parents, I don't think there's ever a plan in which you can start too early on that because you want to know. You never know when that's going to happen. I had experiences growing up. My entire life has been kind of watching that. And so planning for parents has been a thing that I've watched since very early on because I know there's going to be a day where it's not a practice run anymore and it's real this time. And I call practice runs we think this is real, but it's not. Thank God.
yeah, that's that. Hurry up to the hospital. Something's happening. You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So I think having that plan in place and working through it as soon as possible can be really, really helpful and just reassuring. Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners, it's Bree. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, be sure to get on it, where each week we send out information regarding what's going on in the world of child-free life and finances. You can sign up by finding the link in our description.
Yep. So some of the things that I've seen people do to make this work, if you're going to go down the Medicaid path in the long run, so some people have like your parents live with you for a little bit of time when they need assisted living, but if they need more care, they go in. That's awesome. We get into this question of protecting your assets from Medicaid because the way it works is each state has their own rules on Medicaid and you don't qualify until you're broke. And when I say broke, I mean like really broke, like most states are less than 10 grand in assets and you're just living off your Social Security, something like that. And they will have the person spend down every penny until that's gone. So what sometimes people try to do is like preserve some of those assets. And you can gift your assets to somebody, but if you like gift them today and tomorrow you apply for Medicaid, they're like, nope, we're going to claw that back. Like we're going to take that money back. Like it is what it is. It's normally a 5-year look back. So if they've given the money away 5 years ago, usually that's okay. The problem is nobody really knows how long it's going to be. But you can do things. There's also some Medicaid cooperating annuities or long-term care policies where you can take their assets and buy into one of these policies. It protects some of it, but then Medicaid, it's Medicaid participating or cooperating. You'll see those words. Like Medicaid's like, all right, I'm going to ignore that money. We're going to give you some other benefits. If it's a couple, it gets really kind of interesting on the planning side because like whose assets are whose and how does that work? And did we gift out? It's a bit of a nightmare that you need to be planning well ahead. If your parents, let's say they own their own home and own it free and clear, they paid off their mortgage. I mean, maybe, you got one of those boomer parents that bought the house in like the 1960s for like $18,000 and now it's worth a couple $100,000. Like, okay, let's be real on this. Like housing market's changed. Like every once in a while, if I see a broke parent with a paid off house, I'm like, oh, they bought it like 40 years ago. Like, I mean, awesome. That's where you might have some discussions about, okay, mom, dad, you gift it to the kids, which then protects that asset from Medicaid, but you run into that 5-year issue and it's something you cannot put off because you don't know when you're going to do it. So remember, Medicare only pays for like 90 days ish or 101 days, depending on how you look at it, of care really for rehab. It does not pay for long-term care. So you have to get ahead of it. And you can move the assets around. And by the way, if you're going to do this, you want to work with an estate attorney, a financial planner. Like this is one of those, I encourage our clients to pay for the estate attorney, the financial planner for folks. It's a way you can help them to figure out a plan around it. Now, let's be real. If they got nothing, there's nothing we can do. Like it just isn't what it is. Every once in a while, I've had some folks where their parents have a little bit of a house, maybe get that $300,000-$400,000 of the house. They'll sell the house and then build what's called an ADU or accessory dwelling unit behind there for their parents, behind their house. And actually, it's a pretty decent solution because like the parents still have their own space. They'll take the money from the house, pay for that building of that apartment, essentially. And then when the parents pass, you've got it on your property and you can rent it out or sell it or whatever you got to do. It's actually not a bad answer because it's like, oh, the parents are living with me, but they got their own space. But you have to plan ahead about that. And people are like, well, we'll do that when we're not, when we're older. I'm like, yeah, then we're playing chicken with the train with Medicaid.
Yeah, I like the accessory dwelling units. And I think there was an article maybe a month ago now that I saw. It was like, oh, granny pods are the new thing. And I thought that was just a funny name for it, granny pods. But it's basically like a little
tiny house
size. Yeah. Little building in the back. There's also been lots of realtors who are, I love watching house tours on social media. But there have been a lot of ones that I've seen recently where they have, that extra like mother-in-law suite and built into the house, and it's just a separate unit. I think those are a great option too. It's just, what do you prefer? The morbid side of me and the slightly superstitious, like, might believe in ghosts, but I'm not really sure part of me.
So now the shed's going to be haunted?
Yeah, like I need a shed because like if they pass in there, I might just want to demolish it, honestly. So I don't know that I could do right in my house. I don't know. We'll see. It's one of those things.
Well, and this is my whole point about planning around it, because look, mom comes to live for the broken hip, and now she dies in Bree's house, and she's like, I've got to burn down the house.
Yeah. So know your personal superstitions there.
I mean, we're joking about it because it's the only way to handle this. I mean, some of this is just, you got to laugh at it. But the thing is, if you're not planning ahead, you just run out of options. Generational housing used to be very popular. I grew up in the Northeast. There were a lot of split level ranches or raised ranches. And the bottom would be like where the grandparents live, and the parents live on the the top floor. Like, there's ways you can do it. It's just a matter of finding something that's reasonable, but also allows you to still live your life and for them to live their life. I mean, like, and it's one of those things that, like, it's going to happen no matter what. It just is. How do you work? I mean, and just some numbers for you. About a third of folks die in their sleep and just never will need care. I still think they're the ones that win. Like, if I can just go out, no bubbles, no troubles, like I'm out and gone, awesome. I think many of us, most of us would be happy with that solution. It's the other ones that get interesting. So, what happens when you have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, other things where you need extensive care for long periods of time and money? It becomes an issue. So if you want to pay for your parents' long-term care, if you get early enough, you may be able to actually take a long-term care policy out for them. So they have to be okay with it. They have to work through it. And that's actually going to be cheaper than you paying out of pocket in most cases. It's kind of one of those, you have to like get the stars to line up just right to make that happen. Now, if your parents happen to have a long-term care policy, I'm good with you paying for that policy out of pocket yourself. I had somebody who was talking to her dad about this, and like, Dad, do you have a long-term care policy? He's like, yeah, I did. Up until last year, I canceled it because I'm not going to use it. And I'm like, Dad, no! Like, I mean, you pay that policy because you pay that policy before you pay your electric bill. I mean, like, you can do that. If you're going to pay for somebody's long-term care, you can pay for their policy, or you can get one for them. There's also some annuities around it. There's only one or two that I like around this. Like, there's not great solutions. If you're going to pay out of pocket, what I tend to recommend is setting a maximum amount that you're willing to pay for parents' care. And like, this could be however many parents you have. I have 2 parents, 4 parents, whatever it is, however many we have in our family. And this is the most I can reasonably afford. And what we'll tend to do is set aside an account. And, I had the couple I was talking about that was trying to pay for their parents. We said, okay, it was $750,000. They're not going to do that. But what they started doing was actually putting an equal amount each year of their retirement funds in as a parent. So if they're putting $23,500 in a 401k, they're doing the same to a parent account. And then when that parent account is up, that's the end of it. And I like being transparent about that. That goes back to those boundaries that Bree was talking about. Like, got to set this up front. Hey, mom, I have a little bit of money to set aside. I'll help you. But when that runs out, you're kind of on your own. Like, whatever your assets are, whatever Medicaid is, this is all I can do. And sometimes if you do this right, there's kind of like a trick here, which is like you pay for them to go in for good care in a single room. Some facilities will allow them to stay when they go on Medicaid. And it's kind of like a sneaky way to get them in, but you have to have the money to start. I think the difference is we're not going to give just a blank check for your parents' care. We're going to set a limit.
I know. I think that's really important to have that boundary and have that conversation prior, whether it's with you and your financial planner or if you're in a couple, have that conversation together and know, because there can be some resentment too that pops up if you haven't set a boundary before, whether it's resenting your parent or it's, maybe you're caring for your partner's parent, a little bit of resentment towards your partner, and that's not helpful. Nobody wants that. And so getting a conversation ahead of time and talking about it, communicate when we're setting those boundaries. So important.
Yeah, I was actually talking with a psychologist this week who all he does is he does work with families who are in crisis and fighting over this stuff. Now, he doesn't call it that, but like that's kind of what he's talking about. And I'm like, so we were talking about it, and I actually invited him to come on the podcast. We'll get an episode with him later. But we were talking about like, hey, if we can get ahead of it, we get out of the fights. And boy, is that important. And by the way, for couples, it might be fights within the couple. I mean, what happens when one parent's broke and the other side is rich? Like, well, that's a different issue. I mean, you have to set this so that you can still survive. I will say what I like to do for if you have the assets and you can help your parents, I like to buy a care team around them. So you can pay for a financial planner. We have something we call parent checkup. We can actually go in, take a look at their things. We do that only for our clients. We're really doing it to help our clients, but you can pay a financial planner to go look at it, look at the whole picture, look at their insurance, look at everything else. That's a great thing. I like paying for aging care managers who are people that can help figure out what do they qualify for, what is the best care, what do they need. Also a set of eyes and ears for you. You can pay for the estate planning. I mean, I just gave you how to do it for free, but if you want to get something more fancy, you can pay for it. But you can do other things to help rather than just giving money. I'm not a big fan of just giving money when your parents are broke, because then you end up almost like an ATM and it's a never ending stream. Mom, I'll buy your groceries, but I'm not giving you cash. There's ways around it, but you need to work on a plan, and you have to look at that through two lenses. What do my parents need? Cool. And what am I willing to give? And that giving is your time, your effort, your money, everything. And just because you give less don't mean you love them less. And that's a little harsh, but Mom, I got to watch out for myself first. This is that old, in the airplane, you put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. That's kind of what you're doing. And when their parents are broke, you need to do it early.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.